Everyone, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for a webinar regarding updated LEA plan for use of ARP ESSER funds. We appreciate you joining us today. We have a large group of team members here to assist you. I'm Deborah Kaufman, and we'll introduce the others as we get to their slides. So if you have not downloaded this presentation, I will just let you know that it is linked to our webpage, and Elizabeth will be dropping the link into the chat. We updated it just a minute ago, so we've been working on it, and if you want the very latest version, please go to the chat. So today we're talking about updating the use of funds plan for ARP ESSER only, ESSER 3, whatever you want to call it. We're not going back to 1 or 2. This is just for ARP ESSER 3. The reason we're doing it is we now have our final allocations, just like you do with federal programs. When the final allocations come in, you make an adjustment to your application and budget. So today we're going to walk through that. What I've linked for you here is not only the final allocation, but it also is the minimum 20% set aside for learning loss. And once again, is only for ARP ESSER. So we'll be going over that. That information is available for you here. Now, in the commissioner memo that we sent out, we did talk about why we're doing this, as I just addressed, but we want to really bring attention to the program codes that must be used for learning loss, for that minimum 20% set aside. We're asking you to use only program code 170 and only for evidence-based interventions. So what you will need to think about in your district is you can go to the current plan, and we have those linked here. If you click on current plan, that gives you the whole spreadsheet of everyone that submitted their plans to us and the URL they had on their website. And just so that you know that we have to submit these to USED. So that's why you see this whole spreadsheet of all of the plans. So you may take that plan, and you, depending on what format you use to post that on your website, you may go in and update that, put your revision date on there, and we're going to talk about the things that need to be revised in that plan. Or if you need a clean plan, if you want to start with a very clean one that's got everything already put in it, then you can click on this revised use of funds plan. Either one is fine. We just want to make sure that we're following the federal guidance. So here are the steps. So you must revise your LEA plan for use of ARP funds. You must submit that to the department by uploading that plan into your ESSER folder in IndaStar. We request that you do that by June 1st. You can do it tomorrow if you want to, but if you just upload it into IndaStar, and make sure that you label it revised ARP ESSER plan. So that we're not taking away what was uploaded early, but we're adding in the revised plan so that we'll have both of those in IndaStar for the auditors. The second step will be then to post that on your district website and to submit the URL in this link here. So this link is going to, once again, build one of those spreadsheets that has everyone's revised plan for use of ARP funds on it, so that we can be ready then to submit that to USED. Please do that by June 1st. We appreciate that very much. Now, once those plans, that does not stop you from being able to make revisions.
Go back. You froze for a second.
All right. How far back do I need to go, Belinda?
About 2 minutes.
Okay. So let me go back to the beginning of the slide, is here are the steps for having a successful upload of your LEA plan for use of funds. First is to revise that plan to include the full amount of allocation of ARP ESSER funds, and to designate how you're going to spend a minimum of 20% on learning loss. That plan is uploaded into the ESSER folder and labeled as revised. It is posted on your district website, and the URL to where you have it posted is submitted here on the link that we've provided on number 2. We encourage you to have this done before June 1st. After June 1st, if you need to revise your plan in any way, maybe things are coming in cheaper, maybe they're coming in more expensive, maybe they're not coming in, or maybe you've been able to make some change that's going to better impact students. All you need to do is let Jane know that you're making a revision, and she'll walk you through repeating these steps to make sure that you have everything on file for the auditors. All right, so let's kind of get into that use of funds plan. The use of fund plan has 3 big sections where you budget out how you plan to expend ARP ESSER funds. The first one is creating safe and healthy learning environments, and that would fit under that category. So if you're planning to use your ARP ESSER funds for any of these, you would write that in, put in your amounts. When you get to section 2, which is the learning loss section, this is where you're going to come back and put in your total allocation, your final allocation amount, and that minimum 20% set aside, because we're going to be totaling that column, unless you'd like to total it for us, that'd be great. We'll be totaling that column to ensure that a minimum of percent is utilized for learning loss. So once again, I've linked the table here for you with the final allocation and with the minimum 20%. So in that section 2, what you're going to see different is highlighted. Previously, we had several program codes that we thought could be utilized to address these evidence-based interventions. To be prepared for the reporting, it's going to be best that we use program code 170, so it's very clear to the US Ed that these evidence-based interventions meet the learning loss definition. So that's what you're going to see in that cleaned up application. But you could go back through and mark the others out if you so desire to use the one that you already have. So evidence-based interventions, you're going to see in-school acceleration, high dosage tutoring, out-of-school programs, summer learning, educational technology, training. You're going to see access to the opportunity to learn, equitable access to well-rounded education. And you'll notice this is where you're really looking at your subgroups is, are all of my subgroups having the opportunity to take advanced coursework, or are they getting the inclusive practices that they need? It can also include early childhood expansion and enhancement. And you notice that one's highlighted because that was something new that we pulled off of the reporting document that was not clear in that volume 2. Wraparound services for students and practices that or interventions that maximize social, emotional, and academic benefits. So in section 2, there are multiple parts besides the budget. You also have to address how you will monitor for implementation. So let's just kind of set that up. We're going to have high dosage tutoring as our evidence-based practice. How are you ensuring that high dosage tutoring is happening? How do you know that it's meeting the needs of the student? So what does your monitoring, how are you going to know throughout the time period that tutoring is being provided that students are progressing as a result of that? And of course, how will you evaluate the effectiveness? How will you know that high dosage tutoring worked? Because if it worked, and you used it this spring, then you may want to repeat it this summer. Or you may want to repeat it in the fall or next summer. But you should have a method to evaluate the effectiveness. In section 3 of the use of funds plan, that section addresses supporting educator and staff stability and well-being. So some of those things that we saw, adding technology, additional pay for additional duties, retention pay, maintenance of equity resources that are needed. But there are some program codes that by making this revision in learning loss that you don't see on the application. So I wanted to take an opportunity to kind of walk through some of those. And Jane, I'm going to ask you to jump in here and help me. So program code 181. When I look at 181, that was one that we thought we might be able to use, but it's school leadership resources. So I can still code items to program 181, but on my use of funds plan, I probably want to put that under section 1, creating safe and healthy learning environments. Now, do you have to put it there? No, you could put it over under section 3, supporting educator stability and well-being, if that's where it fits with what you are making your expenditures on. But if I'm looking at 182, 183, or 184, and I have coded something to those, I want to come back and look at them to say, do they meet this evidence-based intervention criteria? If they do, I'm probably interested in journal entering those over to program code 170, because those are allowable evidence-based interventions. But you'll have to look at them and make that determination. Going forward, we hope that you'll just use program code 170 if it addresses learning loss. Program code 166, if you recall back to Commissioner Memo 22-041, we sent out a list of amounts that you could program code 166 to loss of revenue. If that's something you've decided to do, make sure you put that into your use of funds plan. And depending on how you're using that, you may have created safe and healthy learning environments with it. You may have supported educator and staff stability and well-being. You may have used part of the money in section 1 and part of the money in section 2. So those are just some suggestions, Jane. I know we've also had a lot of conversation about program code 180, and those are activities allowed under ESSER, IDEA, Adult Ed, Perkins, and McKinney-Vento.
Correct. Probably one of the biggest questions we've had is in regard to professional development that has been coded to learning loss. I just ask that you keep in mind that that 20% requirement is for evidence-based interventions. PD is important, and you can use your ARP ESSER funds for your professional development. You just shouldn't code that to the learning loss. PD in itself is not an evidence-based intervention. So if you have coded some of that to 170, you should change that over to program code 180, because those are allowable expenditures with both. The professional development is allowable with both Title I and Title II, which are the most common use of those where you see PD in any of your Title I and Title II applications. So if you coded professional development to 170, you need to move that to 180, because you need to remember that the interventions themselves are what you're coding to 170.
And Jane, I know people have a lot of questions about, oh, why are we doing all this? And I just want to come back and remind you that we knew up front that there would be reporting required by USAID. We didn't know exactly what it would be, but now we're getting an idea. And at the last meeting with AAFC and ASBO, we talked to federal coordinators and school business officials about we're required to do quarterly reports with USAID. We're doing yearly reports, and Amy and Greg will talk about that later. And we have to do comprehensive reporting, which means we have to show proof that the State Department is ensuring that the 20% is spent on evidence-based interventions that directly are being implemented with students. So Jane, you know, it could be salaries, right?
Correct. And that's what it's like your summer school, your after school programs. Those are going to be your salaries that you're paying teachers or classified, even if it was parapros, you had work in your extended days. Their salaries for that after school hour tutoring or during the summer school, those people are there providing those interventions. So their salary and benefits would be allowable to code to your 20%. Susan's comment on here, but if you're doing PD for PLC, you're educating the staff. You are educating the staff on the best way for them to go back and touch the students and provide those evidence-based interventions. Remember, it's the interventions themselves that we're looking at, not the preparation of the staff to provide those interventions. And that's why I say you can code your PLC training to ESSER, just not to the 170.
So one of the things that I want to direct you back to is your school report card. And if you look at it by school, and this is actually the state view, but if you go in and look at by school in the school report card, it's the very bottom module. Click on long-term goal. And the reason I wanted to bring this to your attention is I just pulled up, this one is elementary. It's a very long report, but this is elementary, all students at the state level. And as you can see on here, we were on our trajectory before COVID. We were on our trajectory for progress to meet our long-term goals. As a result of the pandemic, we know we had learning loss. 88% of our schools suffered some learning loss. 12% continued to progress. But to this money, this 20% set aside is to address this issue right here, that we are making acknowledgement that we had learning loss and making available evidence-based interventions directly to students to overcome that learning loss. So if you haven't looked at your long-term goal report, I do encourage you to go there and look at that data and to use that in conjunction with your interim data, your formative data about making the best decisions for assisting kids and addressing learning loss. Excuse me. In the COVID-19 handbook, volume 2, it did go over the evidence-based practices that USAID was highlighting. And then when we received the reporting, we see that those are very connected. And that's what we're doing today, is trying to help make sure that we have our coding in place to align those. So I just want to kind of bring your attention to these evidence-based interventions. These are things that have proven to address learning loss. They have they're done the research, done the studies on them, and they know that they work. And so we're not going to go over each one, but I did want to bring attention to some that are being utilized here in our state and the support that DESE is providing. So Lupe, in-school acceleration can happen with high quality instructional materials. Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We are very excited to provide some support for high quality instructional materials, beginning with the link you see on your page. If you click on this link, and I know that Elizabeth has been posting the direct link several times, if you go on that website, you will find a lot of information about high quality instructional materials. The most important thing about these materials is that they have been very carefully vetted by teachers. I won't bore you with all the details of how they're vetted and the process, but it is a year-long process. And it goes through several filters to see, is the content good, and the usability. So the end user, the students, is it good for specific populations? So one of the tools you will find when you go on the website, if you scroll over to related links, you will find AR Ed reports. Within AR Ed reports, you will see different colors. Those colors are indicators of the gateways. To get a more elaborate look on the website, you will find a direct link to this new guidebook. And this guidebook, what it does, it is designed to be a tool for district and school teams to look at the different priorities of high quality instructional material, to do some self-reflection so that we can really decide, do we need to upgrade our materials? Do we need to supplement what we already have? Or do we just need to adopt all new material based on new research, based on what we reflect as a community? Because we realize every school community is so unique. And as our student populations change, as there's needs for acceleration, we need to make sure that teachers have those instructional tools on hand. And I would like to say the biggest thing about HQIM is that it helps create that differentiation for students. So all of us on the call have been in the classroom at some point, and it is very tough to give the just right instruction when you have students at varying levels. And so all this HQIM, it gives solid grade level content, and then all the supplemental pieces that are necessary for that student that's ready to advance, and for that student who needs some just-in-time interventions, because you can't go back and reteach the last grade level because the pace is still going on. And so I highly encourage everybody to click on that website, look at the resources we have, and then give us a call. That is why we are here, to really help walk through and think through with your team what is appropriate. You ultimately make the decision, but the tools are there, and we are here to really support you as you decide what is the best high quality instructional material. And as has already been brought up, what's the corresponding professional learning? Because you may have the very best material, but you need to bolster that community of practice so that teachers are really talking about the tools, really talking about the student product, so that we can support one another to help accelerate that student learning.
Thank you, Lupe. We also know that high dosage tutoring is very effective in addressing learning loss. And Missy Wally, you want to talk about Arkansas Tutoring Corps?
Sure, I'd love to. So the Arkansas Tutoring Corps is something that we did after legislative session, this last legislative session, and implemented. And we started with the training and made sure that when we started with the training and recruiting of these tutors, that it was with curriculum that was aligned with the state. So it's curriculum that is aligned with the Science of Reading and MathQuest. So we recruit tutors, we bring them in, and we train them in math and ELA in reading, and we're doing it for K through 8. However, if we have high school students or somebody who's needing tutoring, we will reach out to those tutors based on that need, but they have not received that curriculum training. So as of today, or as of Monday, the 4th, whenever the 4th was, we had 873 applications, and we have 553, I believe, 54 active tutors. That means they've gone through the full background check. They have gone through the curriculum training. They have done everything that they are now considered a qualified tutor. And a qualified tutor means that they've got their first 12 hours. They've gone through FERPA. They've gone through some of the Arkansas Ideas training, and they'll continue with that training. So if you have a tutor in your area or would like to know if there are any qualified tutors in your area, you can also visit, and I'm going to put it in the chat, just the website, the statewide community resource portal, which is something that, again, we did as a result of COVID, but it was we're going to utilize it in this way, just to have it as a one-stop shop. But we have this portal that has your, if anybody needs it for resources for medical needs, clothing, tutoring, workforce. We've joined forces with other state agencies to make sure that it's all in one place, but you can also use that for the tutoring. So you can find all your qualified tutors in that. Our tutors in turn can also find sites on there that they would like to tutor. Let me just say too, though, when they're looking at the sites, we have people on that tutoring site who have applied to be a site, such as Boys and Girls Clubs or things like that. What we don't have are all public schools, universities, and educational service centers. Those are all pre-approved tutoring sites. So if you would like to have some of these tutors to teach summer school, if you've got some after-school programs, we know our teachers are worn out. If you would like to pull them in and teach that, and also school districts that are looking for substitute teachers, reach out. You've got some tutors on here that have gone through the training and may be willing to do that as well. We've gotten some really good success, and we're going to continue to support them, and they are available for use. So I encourage you to please reach out to them. Again, there are 550. I think by the end of the summer, we will have 1,000 tutors who are ready throughout the state, and you can find them in whatever region. And if you don't see any in your area, let us know, and we'll start recruiting in your area and make sure that we're very intentional and focused on that part of the state. And I put the link in the panelists. Oh, I'm sorry, it went to the panelists, not to everyone. Let me put it for everyone. And that's the statewide community resource portal.
Thank you, Missy. That's awesome. What an opportunity for our students. So high dosage tutoring is an evidence-based intervention, but so are the interventions that are provided after school, before school, and summer. And Hope, are you able to join us today and kind of tell us about a link to Commissioner memo that you sent out?
Sure. Afternoon, everyone. So we are partnering with the Out of School Network through the Arkansas State University to grant out over $25 million across the state to support after and summertime learning opportunities for students. And the commissioner's memo that's linked there is a series of webinars that provides different lenses to think about your after school or summertime programming, how we may rethink those opportunities and how we may provide different types of learning opportunities for students. And so the Out of School Network is running those professional developments. And then we're also about to open up around grants to support summertime programming as well as after school programming for next year. So that webinar series is really meant to be leading up to those grants opening, providing districts with some technical support in how to rethink programs, some evidence-based processes that could be utilized in your summer programming, and really just best practice around setting up those programs. So they're open to anyone who wants to join.
That's awesome. So just a reminder to schools that having that additional time with kids is an evidence-based intervention and an opportunity to implement evidence-based interventions with the students directly. But we have summer of 22 to think about, summer of 23 to plan for, and the summer of 24. So we've got 3 summer opportunities to help make this progress that we're desiring. Hope, thank you for that information.
Yeah, and I just want to add one more thing too, guys. As you're thinking about summer and after school programming, think of it as a real opportunity to do things different. It doesn't just have to be academic intervention. It doesn't just have to be tutoring. There can be an element of that because we know that that's also a high yield practice, but think about if there's something you want to implement potentially in your school, summer and after school program is a great place to try that out, to see how it works for your students and then to refine and hone that. So really think about ways to meet the needs of your kids where they are. It doesn't always have to just be academic. It's a great place to do social emotional, just support for kids, things like that.
And it could be acceleration.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So when we think about evidence-based interventions, of course, we think about academics, we're school people, but we really have to think about the whole child and think about the social emotional wellness of students. So Hope, we've got a lot of things available around this level of intervention. You want to talk a little bit about some of those?
Yeah, sure. So we are thrilled to recently have announced the launch of the Thrive Academy. And the goal of Arkansas Thrive is really to look at the needs of the whole child and to help districts start to shore up their system and build their system of support for behavior and academic behavior, social and academic behaviors that we want to see out of students. So really looking at our system, how is it currently set up? Are we looking at behavior through a positive behavior lens, or is everything punitive? As part of Thrive overall, it will be working with districts to look at not only building level policies, but district level policies, handbook policies. Are those all set up in a way that supports the needs of the whole child? And our teachers trained, our principals trained in a way that helps them think differently about behavior and supporting behavior and mental health needs. So the main goals of Thrive really are to help address that tier 1 core instruction in behavior and mental health, and then establishing a larger system to address the greater needs of students. And so Dr. Kendall's on here as well, and she can talk about how Arkansas Aware fits into that. She's one of my partners that's working with me to develop the Thrive Academy. But this really, the first round is going to be targeting building level leaders who work directly with students in discipline. You know, they either are the person responsible for handling discipline, or they're responsible for helping a student after something happens. So this initial academy that is in the commissioner's memo there is really about addressing that need and providing building level leadership with a tool belt to immediately go back and start addressing some of the systems around behavior, and then looking at how to put a larger system in place to support the needs of not only students, but also teachers and well-being for everyone.
That's great, Hope. And that's really doing some of that work that is going to set the school up for success for all students. Elizabeth or Betsy, Dr. Betsy, are you on?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can.
Hello. So I'll talk just a little bit about Aware since Hope mentioned it. So Arkansas Aware in this capacity is really to represent school mental health, and what that can do for you across the state is offer a plethora of training opportunities around mental health first aid, really laying a foundation for your educators, not just your certified staff, but also your classified staff and your support staff, even down to your secretaries, your food service personnel, to get them trained in mental health first aid, to lay that foundation. Like Deb was mentioning earlier, mental health support is a component of this as well. So not just the training that includes mental health first aid, trauma-informed practices, resiliency for all. We also do some teacher well-being type work as far as training capacity goes. But you can also think about direct services for students. School districts contract with third-party vendors to provide mental health services, direct mental health services to students. So it would be a really great opportunity for you to do a gap analysis to determine what's really missing in your mental health services on your campuses or within your school district, and how can you work to fill in those gaps in services. If you reach out to me, I'm going to put my, not just me, but also Beth Mathis. We kind of work together to do the school mental health piece. So if you're interested in some of those options, my email's up here and Beth's email's up here, and we offer technical assistance around either hiring clinicians or assisting you in securing a high quality contract for whatever it is you need in your district. In addition to that, if you click on this site, you can also find assessment tools that will help you do that gap analysis to determine, okay, we know we have mental health services, but maybe we don't have everything that we need, but we don't know what we need. We can kind of help walk you through that assessment, help you secure those services, help you secure that vendor and things like that. So that's really how we can help you. And that's how if you feel like mental health supports is kind of where you want to go, there's a lot of options out there, and that's where you can start.
Thank you, Dr. Betsy. I think, Hope, are you going to speak to response to intervention as well?
Yeah, so if you are at a place where you're really looking at your system for like either you have kind of a little bit of a process for response or intervention, or you don't have anything at all, there are modules, pre-made modules on the Department of Ed website. There's a whole site dedicated to RTI Arkansas. And within that site, there's live modules that you can do. There's kind of some train the trainer stuff there as well. But really, if you're looking at focusing on modules 6 and 7, really focus on tier 1 and leveraging of the high yield, highlight high leverage practices and differentiation. So the link that is provided to you there will take you to the modules, and within that, module 6 and 7 really address and talk about tier 1. And so it's a great place to start if you're just thinking, how do we even get started with RTI or building that system? Because it really is a systematic approach. It's all about putting your systems in place, making sure the right people know who's going to respond to what, and then making that happen. And so those modules are out there and available and can give you some ideas around things that you could utilize.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Lori, do you want to talk to us a little bit about some other opportunities for intervention?
Yes, thank you. And I'm excited that the 20% can be allocated for early childhood programs. And so looking at that, it does state that it needs to be expansion or enhancement. So if you currently provide services for pre-K or early childhood services in your districts, you can definitely look at our website, and I will drop that link into the chat as well for some evidence-based curriculum. If your pre-K programs have not updated or revised their curriculum in the last 5 or 6 years, you will want to look at this list to possibly provide some high quality evidence-based curriculum in your pre-K programs. Another thing that we have, the initiative is the Pre-K Rise initiative, to try to align our pre-K early childhood foundational literacy to our school programming science of reading research. And we are providing a foundational literacy curriculum, which that is that's purchased from DESE to school districts, but you could provide training to provide these evidence-based interventions in your pre-K programs. And again, that is linked to our ABC, Arkansas Better Chance, state-funded pre-K program website. Another thing that some of the programs that have pre-K, they're looking at their playground equipment, and that would go towards gross motor development for children. And we know a lot of our children are coming into our schools with, lacking fine motor and gross motor skills due to lack of being out and playing and developing those skills. So a lot of programs are looking at what are things that are sustainable, because we know that those fundings aren't going to be there forever, but things like playground equipment, looking at those enhancing instructional materials in those pre-K programs. So again, I will drop our link to our website into the chat for you to look at, and feel free to contact us at the Office of ABC or Early Childhood Programs here at DESE, and we can support you in finding ways to enhance your pre-K programs.
And I know listening to all this, we came up with a lot of questions that you may be saying, oh, well, I can pay for the PD out of this program code, and I can pay for the materials and the intervention for the staff that's actually working on it out of program code 170. So anytime that you need to run something by, make sure you contact Jane and let her help you. I did want to include the U.S. Department of Ed's website that gives all of the links and guidance and comprehensive monitoring tools and all of those things. Just if you ever think, oh, I bet Deb and Jane are just sitting around making up stuff for us to do. We're really not. It's all on the website there. I also wanted to bring you back to our West Desi webpage, and that is the CARES Act webpage. And I was laughing about this the other day. When we first started this webpage, we knew about one pot of money, CARES Act money. And then we just started getting more and more and more. And we just kept adding to this page. And now this page is humongous. And every time I think about updating it, I think by the time we get it all cleaned up, broken up, updated, the funds will be gone. So let me just kind of bring you to the highlight of the timeline. ESSER 1 funds are coming to close. They need to be obligated by September 30th, 2022. So this fall, you need to have everything obligated. So you might want to go back and check things that you're planning to pay out of ESSER 1. We don't have very much money left in that hasn't already been reimbursed, but make sure that you're going to get your things delivered in time. ESSER 2 funds have until September 30th of 2023 to be obligated. And then the ARP ESSER funds that we're talking about today must be obligated by September 30th of 2024. So that gives us 3 summers to make sure that we've provided the interventions that are appropriate during the school year and after and during the summer that kids need. So we're going to come up on a lot of questions. I expect that some of our school districts have already started expending funds that they thought would count for the 20%, but they may have used a different program code. So we would recommend that you pull that list of expenditures, go in and look at each one of them and decide which ones meet the criteria for evidence-based intervention. You would use the commissioner memo that we sent you, Commissioner Memo 22-138, as part of your evidence. And then, you know, when you're journal entering, write a rationale such as you're moving these expenditures to program code 170 learning loss to meet the ARP ESSER reporting requirements for evidence-based interventions. Now, Jane can always help you, but these are the times when we turn to our friend Kathleen and say, Kathleen, help us know how to examine what we've already done. Moving forward, it's pretty easy, and we'll tighten up our use of funds plan to address how we're moving this. But right now, I know there are school business officials out there that saying, oh my goodness, what do we do? So Kathleen, kind of help us calm our nerves and figure out how to do this successfully for our district.
Okay, in the information I gave Mrs. Kaufman to put in the slide that you see, I gave directions in the menu path to pull up and look at your expenditures for a specified program code range where you might want to be able to move expenditures from one program code to another. For all they've explained in this entire meeting. Could we go to the next slide? Okay, so if we pulled it up for, I don't remember what we put in to pull up. I think we put in a range of program codes for the 180s maybe, and this is what pulled up. You can see in these budget units the report that gives you the path on the screen before would pull up to an Excel file, the following, and the only expenditure you see is in the first budget unit to program code 180, which is, you know, in the last 5 digits there in the budget unit. And to move the expenditure from there to program code 170, all you have to do is, you see the debit and the credit entry below that. If I wanted to move, if that entire amount qualified to be moved to program code 170, then you would debit that budget unit in 1 2-line journal entry with the 170 program code, and then credit, which a credit takes the expenditure away and a debit adds the expenditure to the new budget unit. So we would be taking it all out of program code 180 there as shown what we have. Now, if you do not know, by looking at this, if you need to know more detail of what's included in this 24,338.19, for example, you would have to print the expenditure audit trail to see this trend. You know, there might be 10 transactions made up there that all were charged to supplies in program code 180. Account number 66100 is supplies. So if you look at all those individual transactions and only $4,265.75 add up out of 5 or 6 transactions that you can move, you know, you would not move the whole dollar amount. You would only move those amounts that applied. Does that make sense?
It does, Kathleen. And I think we had, someone had asked, do they have to go back into each transaction? And what I'm hearing you say is, if you pull up your spreadsheet and document either this lump sum or some subgroup sum of items that you've identified, you could make that journal entry for that larger amount and then just add whatever your journal entry justification and a copy of that commissioner memo. Would that be enough?
Yes, that would be sufficient. You would not want to make 5 journal entries for 5, you know, if I had an expenditure that I'd paid to one vendor and another one to another vendor and another one to another vendor, but they're all coded in this top line, which shows the total of $24,000. You don't want to make 6 two-legged, I call this a two-legged journal entry, a debit and a credit. You don't have to do that 6 different times. Just add those up, make 1 two-legged journal entry, attach your documentation on the back of what makes this up, or what they will accept for their justification to move it out of 180 to 170.
So I think another question that's going to come up here is, okay, so I'm going to do that. Do I need to go back into my written justification for each individual transaction and update that justification saying it's moved to learning loss? And we're saying no. What you're put together, your documentation package for the journal entry with a copy of the memo and in your notes should be enough. You just shouldn't have to backtrack to all of those unless you're pulling them out to look at them to go, oh, that does meet the criteria, right?
Are you asking me, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to jump in here. So on the written
Okay, yeah.
justification, on the written justifications themselves, because Kathleen she doesn't see those justifications. You know, a lot of times we're not seeing them because we're asking you to keep those written justifications there at the district level. So if I'm in federal programs, most likely if I've spent ARP funds, I'm talking Jane Green here. I'm not talking everybody else. If I'm turning back through my justifications that I have written, I'm going to say, oh, you know, I've coded this to 180 and I do intend for this to be. So I'm probably just going to write on the bottom of that justification 170 just for Jane Green's benefits. But we're not asking you to do that. I know that there was a question that came up about timesheets, and I'm going to, you know, we have just asked you to keep why they were getting additional salaries and benefits. Let's say they're doing after school tutoring. We know that that is an eligible learning loss code. We know that. So if you wrote a justification saying you're going to do after school tutoring, you're going to spend this much on it, you don't have to go back to that justification and change that. We're going to know that salary and benefit for after school, because that's what it's going to be coded as, is an allowable 170 expense.
And in your journal entry, you're going to make a note of that when you kind of put your documentation together for that journal entry. So I just showed you the slide one, just looking back on written justification. There are 4 components in a really good written justification for any expenditure or for any group. that you need to journal entry. But an example might be, I was asked to come back and kind of help us remind what's a good written justification. And even if you were writing this saying, I'm moving all of my summer school employee cost over to 170, then I could just write one written justification that goes along with my journal entry. That the data suggests I had learning loss. And I'm using the words right out of my program code sheet, which I've linked for you here. So these are the words that are helping me to fill out my written justification. I'm using my data, but I have evidence that we have learning loss, and I need to use ESSER, ARP ESSER funds. My policy that we already have set tells me how much I'm going to pay these summer school employees, and the total cost is estimated to be some amount. And then why is this necessary? Well, we've determined that summer learning is an opportunity to catch up, accelerate, and to implement evidence-based activities and interventions that will meet the needs of students. And then I'm showing that I could even put that I have transferred whatever previous coding was used to program code 170. So you're just writing good notes for the auditor. So once again, if they've got questions, Jane, they can call you
Correct. Anytime.
anytime. I wanted to bring you back to our CARES Act webpage, just so once again, today we're going to put our recording. The slide should already be there, but once we have this recording and we get it flipped over, we'll get it posted there. So if someone's at a meeting today and couldn't join us, come back under technical assistance and you'll see that posted in a few days. So I've asked Greg and Amy to join us because they sent another memo out that was regarding ESSER, and just to see if you had any questions, or Amy or Greg, if you had any comments about that memo.
No, we don't have any. We just need the surveys turned in. There's no question. It was just those 8 questions we need answered so we can get those answers passed on to the feds. But other than that, no, not really anything else to add.
Greg, I thought the form was really pretty easy to fill out, and I think it's helpful to school districts to see the section that was grayed out on ARP ESSER. That's not information that you're requesting at this time, but it sure lets you know what we're going to need to be able to report on in the coming future, right?
Correct.
So the team needs this data by April 22nd for every district and every charter school. So please put a note on your calendar, because they have a very quick turnaround until they have to report this to US Ed.
Hey, Deb, on Susan Gilly's question, it is a specific number of students. She
Great.
asked a question in the chat box about, is it a percentage or a specific number? It's a specific number.
That's helpful. Thank you. All right. Another memo that I wanted to just remind you about briefly, because it is talking about ESSER, is Commissioner Memo 22-129. It's linked here for you. Every 6 months, we're required to ensure that you update your continuity of services plan. Sometimes we call it ready for learning. It's what are you doing to ensure that your school is safe, that it's open. And this is the place where, you know, used to it would have a mask mandate in it or some kind of spacing mandates, but every 6 months you're asked to update that, make sure it's posted on your website, that you've taken in public comment and that you can show you've taken in public comment. So it's great if it says, hey, we took public comment, we had these comments and took these actions into account in the review or revision. So that should be posted on your website by April 15th. And then the URL should be submitted to DESE by clicking on this form and dropping that in. Once again, it's just kind of like the use of funds plan. The reason we're giving you these forms to drop in a URL from your website is that we have to turn around very quickly and then report that to US Ed. So we appreciate you helping us get those spreadsheets ready to go. So just a quick reminder about that. I know we had a nice spring break and I didn't want anybody to forget we've got an upcoming report due. If you haven't been posting on your continuity of services or ready for learning plan, the revision dates, please make sure that you have done that. The worst thing would be to have one that was dated October 15th of 2021 when you wrote the first one. So make sure that you are revising the date on that and noting that it has been updated. So as always, we are here. Our website has all of our contact information, and I'm going to stop sharing and ask our team to look at the chats and see what questions do we have and who has an answer.
I think I'd like to touch a little bit on Lupe when she was talking about the high quality instructional material. This is just Jane Green's thoughts, but if you have summer school or after school programs and you don't have high quality instructional materials to use with those kids to provide interventions, it's going to be hard for you to do. So high quality instructional materials to be used during those after school and summer school programs, by all means, code those to 170. And I don't know if that was a question on there, but I thought about that when Lupe was talking.
Yes, I think Susan asked that question, can purchase of new curriculum be coded to learning loss? Yes, because Lupe, talk a little bit about core instruction. What's the value of quality core instruction?
I'm not sure.
Lupe, do you want to speak to that? The value of quality core instruction?
Oh, absolutely. It really is foundational. We are doing a lot of work with our partners, really looking also at professional learning, but just having the right tools in the hands of teachers. If you go, I feel like I'm a marketing salesperson, right? But if you will just pull up this handy dandy notebook, it has data that shows how many of our teachers in Arkansas are left to their own devices. They are Pinterest planning lessons. They are Googling lessons, and really having those instructional materials that have been vetted by professionals makes all the difference to ensuring that learners have on grade level content available to them. It really does even the playing field when we think about high reliability schools, right? So do I have a solid curriculum that every teacher can be working from so that we're all speaking the same language? Yes, it does not take away our style. It does not take our unique approach. It just says, this is rigorous content that's on grade level, and it comes with the supports and the scaffolds for the acceleration and the just-in-time interventions to address what learners need. It absolutely makes all the difference. And then going to Hope's point, also looking at those socio-emotional side of things and thinking about what else can we do for those summer activities? What have we been wanting to try out with learners? And I can just go back to my years in buildings when we were doing some really fun things. And within those fun things, there was phenomenal learning happening because the teachers had the right tools. The students didn't feel like they were locked in to a right answer, but they could really let their thinking flourish. And so again, I invite everyone to reconsider their core instruction and ask themselves, what are we providing for our students and our teachers so that our core instruction is of the utmost quality, and what professional learning accompanies it so that teachers know how to use those tools to the max capability.
Yeah, that's really what ARP ESSER funds are for. Jane, Pamela asked, can a mental health counselor that was hired this year, they paid them under program code 183, but they could do a journal entry to program code 170 if they've been
Yeah,
providing
And
direct.
I think that
Yeah.
concern, well, I don't know if it's a concern, but she mentioned about redistribution of salary. And I don't know, Kathleen, if you're still on here, you may help me with this. They're only allowed to do that redistribution one time, correct?
That's correct, but if they can make a journal entry to move salary if they're only changing the program code without a redistribution required. So if you're moving it to the same fund and the same function and the same object, just changing the program code, you can do a JE to move salary from program code to program code without doing a redistribution.
Thank you.
And that's why we have Kathleen on here.
That's right. One of the questions was, what is the deadline for all of our code changes or changing to 170? And so my suggestion is you're going to have to kind of have an idea to get your budget pretty tight. And we need that application, that revised application turned in by June 1st. But if you're kind of have a list of what all you're going to do, and then you're finishing out your journal entries a little later on, I think, Kathleen, you have until period 13 to get it all done. Is that correct?
Yes.
Look how much we are learning from her.
I just also received an email from a user asking what commissioner's memo do they attach to the journal entry to move this from program code to program code. You probably stated that, but can you restate it?
I did. Elizabeth, if you'll go back and find the commissioner memo for today's webinar that has all of that information in there. I've got several written down here and I don't remember which one was which.
So while she's doing that, I want to talk about multi-year contracts. So I understand that companies right now are really pushing, districts have money to sign on to multi-year contracts. But you need to remember, money that you spend in this year is intended to be for services that are offered or happening this year. Now, am I saying that you can't say, well, Deb Kaufman Curriculum Company said that she'd give me a really good deal if I would sign a 5-year contract? Well, somewhere in that contract, it better say that I'm going to renew this annually and not pay her $50,000 up front, because next year, Deb Kaufman Curriculum Company might decide that she's going to go into, I don't know, some other kind of business and close that down, and you're going to be out $50,000 because you paid for all of it up front. So ask your vendors when you are doing those to do it on a renewal basis, and you pay them yearly.
That's great. Tammy asked about the survey that Greg was talking about, and that too was linked in a commissioner memo that's at the end of the slides. It was, would we use a particular report to get that data? Susan, I'm assuming we may have to talk offline on that one to get more details, but the specific number of students. Some
Yeah,
of
I
that,
told her to give Amy Thomas a call and we can talk about it.
Yeah.
I've been answering that in the chat box as much as possible.
yes, thank you so much. And I would just tell you also that we meet with federal coordinators and school board officials, that AAFC and ASBO every other week on Tuesdays at what, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, Jane?
The AAFC, we meet at 2.
At 2 o'clock every other Tuesday. So I'm sure we'll continue this conversation. But as every one of the panelists have spoken today, we are more than happy to work through, talk through. If you get stressed out about something, calm down, call us, let us think through it with you. We'll get all the right people together to try to help you. So I'm looking through and I think we've answered all of the questions. So I want to thank everyone that joined us today, and I want to thank our panelists so much for being willing to talk about evidence-based interventions. And I know it's a challenge to have to do some journal entries and recode these things and update your use of funds plan. And I do appreciate all of you for understanding that our goal is to provide the very best service to you and to minimize your risk of any findings. And so I think when you look at the report that Greg is needing you to complete, you'll see that we only make revisions when necessary to be the best support to you. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for the work that you're doing for Arkansas students. And the session will be recorded and posted. And please, please, please reach out to us if you need any assistance. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.